Institute for the Study of War reported that the pace of Russian advance has slowed in the beginning of the year. Institute specifies that in the beginning of December 2025, Russians were increasing their presence on the territory of almost 300 square kilometers, and in the beginning of January 2026 on almost 75 square kilometers. What does this indicate?
I'm not in agreement with this assessment. I would say that the Russian, the way they are advancing is significantly different nowadays, and the situation is not linear. So they are more into infiltration and making large parts of the area which one could define as a front line, but is actually none of that, because there is no clear front line in much of the sectors, or most of the sectors in Ukraine anymore. There is actually something like a wide gray zone, as you call it in Ukraine. This means nobody controls something like 15 kilometers on the Ukrainian side and 15 kilometers on the Russian side. There's just troop movement, mostly by the Russians, so they are trying to infiltrate, move behind and around the different of Ukrainian positions. And Ukrainians are trying to keep their positions resupplied, while the Russians are trying to keep the positions they have reached, or their survivors of their infiltrations resupplied with batteries for radios foremost, but also with food, water and ammunition. So in this regards, actually, when one checks what was going on in the different sectors, in different sectors of this war of the last week, the Russians have continued advancing. And of course, in some cases, very little, in other cases, a lot, or at least they have run some infiltrations, again, 10, 15 kilometers behind Ukrainian front lines. If you take the situation, for example, in Stepnohirsk, on the former bank of Dnipro, the Russians have outflanked the Ukrainian position along the Dnipro, advanced some 10 kilometers further north, and they are currently controlling all the venues of supply of remaining Ukrainian units in the Stepnohirsk area. Therefore, this area is going to collapse sooner or later, because the Ukrainians cannot keep it resupplied. Besides, the ZSU units deployed there are barely understaffed, undermanned. They lack troops, they lack supplies, they lack almost everything. So the situation is not rosy in these regards. And that is why I say you have a different situation than that's why my assessment is different than that of Institute of War, as a study of war. Essentially, you have gradual Russian infiltrations until the area in question becomes untenable for Ukraine. Then the usual situation is that Glavkom Syrskyi and General Staff of Ukraine are doing nothing or reacting much too late. They are trying at any cost to hold the area in question, losing ever more troops in the process. And sooner or later, the area is lost, just like this has happened in Pokrovsk-Minohrad or in Hulaypolye. And that is what we have in several places along the front line. That's why I say the Russian advance didn't stop or didn't slow down or anything. It just continues in a different form.
In your opinion, how our military commanders had to behave and what they had to do?
Well, principally, they would have to start reforming the entire armed forces from top to the bottom. This means remove all the generals who have no combat experience, first-hand combat experience since 2014. Also generals who are, the majority of whom are corrupt or incompetent, proven as incompetent. Secondly, you need an entirely new system of training of not only for newly recruited how should I call them, Ukrainian soldiers, but also and especially for at all levels of command. That means you have to create finally an NCO, non-commissioned officers, sergeants, corporals, and so on, corps, You have to train them so that they learn to take care of their troops. Then you have to train your officers from lieutenants up to generals to start taking care for their troops as well, to start taking care for the troops to remain alive, to be taken good care of, that it never happens again that your troops are for 160, 170 days in the same position without replacement, like this is currently regularly the case. And then after reforming or training and retraining the entire force, which would be a process lasting at least 6, probably 9 or more months, as recommended by, for example, Drapati and Bilecki already the last year, which means it could have already been, no, sorry, it was in late 2024, which means over 1 year, which means that this process could have been completed by now, but it wasn't. And so on and so on. You're turning in circles. I'm all the time explaining the same, and this is not happening. Now we have a new Minister of Defense, Fedorov, who has a good reputation as a doer, as a accomplisher, as a good manager. We are going to see what happens with him. I'm trying to hold back and patiently wait to see if something is going to happen in regards of reform of the general staff as well, because the general staff is not doing its job, which would be to study the combat experiences and constantly provide the feedback to all the officers on the front line and all the soldiers on the front line in form of simple manuals for how to do and what to do in what case, which is happening time and again, but not often enough. So therefore, the general staff is not doing its job either. Then you have a problem also with general staff in regard of logistics, where there are still too many Soviet-style, under apostrophe, Soviet-style officers who are sitting on supplies and not really providing them to the troops. And it remains extremely complex to obtain replacements in, for example, in batteries, in chargers, in power banks, in replacements for Starlink terminals, replacements even for barrels for machine guns. The officer who is responsible for loss of a machine gun has to fill five different papers, then request a resupply of the barrel for machine gun. And then it takes 1 or 2 weeks for the officers in the rear to react to his request. Unsurprisingly, I say again, I'm running a small charity in this regard. I know what are the troops demanding, and they're not receiving this from their supply system. Therefore, they are requesting it from us, and we are supplying this in a matter of week or less, at least as long as Ukra is still working in the sector in question. So this is why I know that there are major problems with logistics, so to say. And I don't want to see how is this going on, or how is this working or not working in regards of ammunition supply, because the mass of ammunition goes where Sirski and his assault troops are. When Sirski appears in some sector of the front line, suddenly there is enough ammunition for everybody. There is enough artillery ammunition, there are enough bullets. But if he goes away, and this is usually happening on the same day, all of a sudden the resupply stops. It's the same with the troops. The mass of newly recruited, newly trained troops are going to the assault troops who are under Sirski's personal command. They are receiving up to 800 new troops a week. Other brigades are happy if they receive 30 replacement troops a week, or a month. A month, actually, not a week. So you have the same problems again, and we are going to turn around this forever unless something happens. And what is crucial, why am I talking about this so much? Why am I emphasizing this? The Russians are so incompetent that they have wasted their armed formations, their army is exhausted, tired, in terrible condition. So any improvement on the Ukrainian side would improve the situation in Ukraine. But this is simply not happening because of Sirski's and Zelensky's refusals to apply these necessary reforms. So this means if we improve the condition and capability of your armed forces, you are automatically improving the capability of these armed forces to fight, to stop the Russians, to be successful in combat. Instead of this, nothing is happening. The situation remains the same, which means Sirski continues dissolving brigades into, at earlier times, battalions. Meanwhile, it's down to companies. He's distributing single companies from the same brigade at 5-10 different sectors of the front line. And then wonders how comes there's no cohesion between the units, and there are massive problems with coordination between different companies and battalions, and whatever is left of different brigades. Brigades are understaffed. Brigade commanders do not have an idea what is the conditional difference of their battalions and companies, and so on and so on. You're turning in circles and explaining all the same things for 2 years, and nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.